Okay, so today we're going to talk about SysAid IT tools. That's our third session of the SysAid certification program. My name is Joseph. You've all met me on our first class when we talked about the milestones for successful implementation. So I'll skip the intro and start by presenting today's topic. Today we're going to handle two of the challenges we introduced in the beginning of the course. We're going to see how the asset management and monitoring modules can help us to future-proof our systems. We're also going to see how we can reduce time we invest per incident to a minimum using remote control, knowledge base, and projects and task management. So let's start by talking about asset management. Generally, when we started the course, we talked about the SysAid agent. We've basically seen how the SysAid agent helps us to gather inventory information about the computers, about the physical and virtual computers we have. Aside of that, we can also store additional information on the assets at the same place where all the inventory information we get from the agent. We can include important files like manuals and drivers and basically any other useful file you could think of, I don't know, invoices, whatever. We can also add some additional information to the asset manually. For example, if you want to store information about when that asset was purchased or when the maintenance contract for it is due, so we can store that information and then even get reminders on these dates. We'll also see what type of reportings we can get, and we'll get a sneak peek into the manager dashboard, manager portal, to see charts related to asset dashboard, even though Sarah is going to cover the reporting topic on the next class. We're going to take a sneak peek into some of the reportings in terms of asset management. The asset management also allows us to manage software licensing, so you can document all the licenses you purchased, and you can keep track of how many installations you have. So you can even get notifications when you exceed the amount of licenses. When you have more installations of the software than what you're licensed for, you can get notifications for that. We can see how you can manage suppliers for software and hardware, and even support providers. And we're also going to see how we can use the agent to get some more information from the computer registry. So let's dive in and take a look at an asset. So basically, I'm logged into a system here, and you can go into any one of the computers. You can see all the information we got from the agent. We have the computer name, we've got the type here, and we can see the model here is under the catalog number. You can see this one is a Dell Optiplex 760. With all the information from Dell, like the serial number, the model, well, the manufacturer itself, some more information from the computer, like the operating system that's running on it, the CPU, memory, display adapter, storage information, network information, and you can even switch to the hardware tab and see even more information about each and every one of these components. Like CPU shows you more information than what we've seen on the information tab. So all that information is coming in from the SysAid agent. The SysAid agent collected all that information locally on that computer and posted it to the SysAid server, and this generated an asset for us. And from this point onwards, any update on that information will be sent from the agent on that computer. In addition, we can also add some more information onto that. For example, under the maintenance tab, you can see a bunch of fields that are not filled in. These are fields that the agent cannot automatically detect the information. For example, the location of the asset cannot be determined by the agent automatically, but you can still document what's the location of this asset. Furthermore, we've got building, floor, cubic, whatever information you want to add. Monitor is something that people like to document. I think it's a little cumbersome, but still you have the opportunity to do that. Some more information about when it was purchased, what's the warranty expiration on it, when was the last maintenance date, what's the date of the last maintenance you did on the asset, and also the purchase cost. You can document how much that asset cost you. You can then run reports based on that information, assuming you have that information entered on all your assets. You can see an average cost of an asset. You can see you can get a report for asset age. If you use the purchase date, it's going to calculate the asset age based on that. So all that information you can enter here. You can also attach files to it if you just add the attachments field, and we're going to talk about designing forms in the 5th class, which is customization. But generally what I just did is added the attachments field. I can attach files to this asset, and you can basically attach any related file to this computer. A good example for this is actually something from my personal past. I had a server which had a weird RAID adapter, and I remember working really hard just to find the right driver for it. Once I did, I just attached it to the asset in my SysAid, and I had that driver, the zip file containing the driver attached to the asset. Next time I needed it, it was very easy for me to get driver from SysAid rather than going through the whole internet and trying to find that driver again. So that's a good idea, to attach relevant drivers, manuals, any file you think might be relevant to the asset. So these are that's the information you can attach, you can add on to the asset. What else did I want to show you? Software. Basically, you get a whole list of all the applications, all the software that's installed on the asset. And this is being taken from the Add Remove Programs console on that asset. The agent knows to pick it up and post it back to the server. Based on that information, we can then later track licensing. For example, if I have a Microsoft Office Standard 2010, you can then go ahead and count how many installations of that particular software you have on your network. And actually, let's go there right now. This is something I really like about asset management, is the ability to keep track of software licensing. Under software products, right now I don't have any tracked software, but I can create one. Let's take that Microsoft Office as an example. So the product name would be MS Office 2010. Version is 2010, let's say standard. Vendor is Microsoft. Let's say I have 5 licenses of that, and I purchased it, let's say February 1st. Support for that, let's say a year. So same date, just 2013. And most important thing is to select the install name that indicates that that software is installed. So I'm going to find Office. We've got this is 2010. This is 2010. It could be either one of those if you don't mind keeping track of different editions. So you could do that. I'm going to select those two, and that means that this software product is going to count all the computers that have at least one of these install names showing on the software tab. And it's going to give you a count right here and a link to show the computers that are running it. Okay, so you can always go in, see which computers have it, maybe even export into Excel or PDF for a printout. You could do that. This is software product. One more thing, if you work in a multi-company environment and you manage software licensing separately for each company, this is very common for MSPs. If you manage other companies' IT, IT environments, then you're most likely to have different companies, and then you can create a different software product for the different companies. You can create that same Office 2010 one for each company. I don't have any companies configured here, but if I did, I could do that. And this is going to count the number of installations of Office 2010 on the assets related to that particular company. Okay, so very useful for MSPs. Let's go ahead and talk about suppliers. Suppliers is where you would naturally go in and manage, the companies that provide you with the service, provide you with hardware, provide you with software, anything, any company that supplies a service or product to you. For example, I can do, I've got one here, IT Supplies Incorporated. Let's say it's an imaginary company. This company provides me, computers. I buy computers from IT Supplies. And let's say I also have Dell as a supplier. Now when I go into an asset, I can say who's the support provider for this and who's the supplier for this. I'm going to take this computer right here, which is a Dell computer. I can say under maintenance, you can see under maintenance I have supplier and support provider. I can say the supplier for this computer is IT Supplies Incorporated, but the support provider is Dell itself. I didn't purchase the computer straight from Dell, I purchased it from IT Supplies Incorporated, but any support I need will be provided to me from Dell. Okay. Any questions up until now? By the way, we have Ori Sharon with us on chat today. If you have any question, you can post them to Ori on chat, and he'll relay the questions to me or answer them to you on chat. Any questions, Ori? Okay, there's a question about importing information for assets from CSV. Yeah, let's talk about it right now. Let's talk about it right now. Before we do, let me just get one more topic off my list here. Let's say some computers have information stored in the registry that you'd like to pull. What you could do is under Asset Settings, go to Registry Keys, and enter in the path in Registry for the key that you want to import. For example, I'm going to go here. Okay, so let's say I need to import this. Okay, this one doesn't really mean anything, but still going to go with it as an example of something I might want to import from the registry. What you need to do is enter the path to it, but not through, or actually, yeah, you're going to need to go through HKey, local machine, then software, then WoW 6432 node, then Ilient, then agent, and then the name of the key is serial. Once I do that, it's going to request the client computers, whenever they post inventory information, it's also going to request them to go into registry, see if you have this key, and if you do, bring in the actual value for it. Okay, so this is how you do that. And you know, some software hold information about the serial or other useful information in the registry, so you can just use SysAid to pull that information from these computers. When you do that, you'll be able to look at that from within the asset. Again, there's a designated field for it, registry values. Right now it's not going to have anything because I didn't get a chance to import that information yet. But as soon as I update the inventory information, I get the updates, it's going to include the registry values from each computer right here on the bottom. Now let's talk about importing information from CSV. Okay, this is probably my next slide. No, okay. I'm going to skip a slide and talk about importing information from CSV file and some other ways we could import or populate asset information. I'm going to start by talking about CSV right here. This is the third option. When you have an Excel spreadsheet that holds information about assets, let's say you've got some assets that you didn't install the agent on and you want to import them into SysAid. Okay, so we're talking about new assets, things that don't exist in SysAid. What you could do is go to Import Assets and basically give the file to this box right here. And I should have one on my desktop. There it is. Let's open it and see what we have here. Okay, so I've got a file with the first column containing headers. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to say do not import the headlines. So check that box because the first line is the headers. Okay, I can say if I need more fields, I can say how many fields I need and then do save fields. It's going to give me more of these to work with. Okay, I don't have more than 10 fields, so I can just leave it at that. What I have is 7 fields. So we're going to use these 7, and the rest would be do not import. Okay, let's map the fields to the columns. Okay, so first column is name, second column is type. So this one is name, second one is type. Then we've got serial, manufacturer, model, serial, manufacturer, model. Then we've got owner. This is owner. And we've got IP address, I believe. Yeah, last one is IP address. Okay, this is column number 7. It's going to import into the IP address field, and the rest don't exist, so I'm going to say do not import field. Once I click submit, it's going to load that file into SysAid. It's going to parse it and take all the asset information and create assets for it. Keep in mind that this has to be a CSV file, okay, not an Excel file. You can use Excel to build that file, or you can even take an Excel file and save it as a CSV file. Just keep in mind that this has to be an a CSV file. Let's click submit, and immediately it tells me that 19 out of the 19 assets were imported, and sure enough I have 20 lines here, but the first one is a header, so I actually do have only 19 lines, 19 assets. I can take a look now under asset list. I'll find all these assets that I imported from CSV file, like printer 01, printer 02, and so on. Let's take one of them and see the information I get. I have the manufacturer, the model, the serial, the owner for this printer, and basically anything I requested to import. Now let's see what happens when I want to add information into SysAid. Okay, let's say I want to add a description for my workstations. Okay, let's just filter by workstations first. I've got 5 workstations here. And let's say I want to add the description for each one of those, but I don't want to go through one by one and do that. What I could do is export the list here to a CSV file, add the information I want for a description, and then import it back. Now, when I import the file back, I need to somehow tell SysAid which existing asset to associate each of the lines with, because these are not new assets. If I don't tell it which goes where, it's just going to create duplicates for me, and I don't want that. To do that, I'm going to need the asset ID, which is the unique identifier for the asset, and I'm going to need to show it as a column on my list here. And again, we're going to get to talking about customizing SysAid in the 5th class. In the meanwhile, I'm just going to show you how to add the asset ID. This is the asset ID. I'm going to add it into the list here, and you can see that the asset ID is showing for each asset. This is the unique identifier. When I import the file back, assuming I have this information as a column in the CSV file, and I point it to the asset ID, it's going to tell that this asset ID already exists. I'm not going to create a new asset for it. I'm going to update the information on the existing one. So let's do that right now. I'm going to export the list that I have here into a CSV file. Let's save that. It's export 3. And okay, so what I want to do is I don't need any of the other fields. I only need asset ID and the columns that I want to add. Okay, I don't even need the name, but it's just easier for me, as a human, to know which computer CERT-XP1 is rather than knowing which computer Zen-0D8F27EA and so on and so on. It's easier for me to identify the asset by the name of it. Okay, so I can say this one is kiosk computer at lobby. This one is the receptionist. Receptionist. And this one is the accountant. PC. Okay, and this is the main server, even though it's just a workstation, but it's just a description. Let's say I don't want to import any description for SCP-040. I can save this file. Again, I need to save it as a CSV file so that SysAid could read it. Then when I go to import that file back, it's under import assets. I'm going to point to that let's go through users, instructor, downloads. That's where the file is. It's export 3. And I don't want to import the headlines. Okay, first one is name, but I don't really need it, okay, because I already have the name on these assets. What's more important for me, and actually let's not import the first column. This is more important for me. I want description. And the most important thing for me is the asset ID to prevent duplicates. Okay, so asset ID is column number 3. Description is column number 2, and column number 1 I just don't need it because I already have the name within SysAid. Let's go ahead and submit. It's going to tell me that it imported the 5 assets from this file. When I go to asset lists, I can see all the information I entered right here. Okay, so that's a really quick way to update a lot of asset information from different assets. Instead of going through one by one within SysAid, you can just export the list into a CSV file, let somebody fill in a new column for whatever information you want to add, then import it back. Just make sure you have the asset ID on the export. When you do the export, make sure you have the asset ID. One more thing about importing assets before we proceed is the format column. You noticed I didn't really use any of the format field on any of the imported columns. It is grayed out and I cannot use it. It's only going to become activated when I choose a date field. For example, if I do purchase date, let's do purchase date when I do a date field, it automatically gets activated, and I need to specify what's the syntax, what's the date format I used in my CSV file, so that SysAid will be able to parse it and understand the date, the actual date. Okay, so that's the format column. Now let's talk about getting inventory information using SNMP. Now, up until now, we've talked about computers, we've talked about workstations and servers, things you can actually install an agent on and count on the agent to bring in all the information. But what if you have network devices like printers and switches and routers and firewalls and anything that plugs into the network, even IP phones? Okay, you don't want to create those manually, and you want to rely on some automation to do that. And under network discovery, you can find the SNMP scan, which will basically, what that's going to do, you're going to supply it with a range, and I'm going to say let's do 201 until 230, let's say 230. Got a range of 30 IP addresses. You can do complete ranges, 10.1.1.1 until 10.1.1.254, and I just happen to know that in this 30 IP address range, I just have network equipment to discover. You can choose the SNMP version, and I'm not going to get too deep into the differences. Let me just tell you that version 1 usually does the trick, and version 3 requires authentication, so you need to set up a password on the devices and specify the password right here. I'm just going to do SNMP version 1. Community string is public by default for most devices, so this should, again, usually do the trick. If you want to exclude certain IP addresses from this range to not pick up using SNMP, you can do that. Just separate them with a comma. So if I have 2 IP addresses, I can do a comma and then 10.1.1.204, and then it's going to skip those 2 IP addresses. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to skip it. If you want to schedule it to run on a daily basis or a weekly basis, you can select that checkbox, tell it when you want it to run next. So I'm going to say tomorrow morning. This is a 24-hour clock, so if you want to do 9 p.m., you can do 2100, and then it's going to do 9 p.m. But let's say I want to do that at 10 a.m. Okay, so that's going to be 10, just 10 o'clock. And I want to run it on a daily basis, so every 1 day. And I think I mentioned this quick option. This is basically a new feature in SysAid 8.5. The SysAid server is constantly looking into the network to map where devices are sitting at which IP addresses. This is making the SNMP scan and agent deployment much quicker. You could do that, or you can remove that and not rely on the information the SysAid server picked up to that point. Just going to do that. Click Add, and now I can go ahead and even force the discovery to take place right now. I'm going to click Run Now. Automatically, you see that a green area is added right here, and in that area, you're going to see updates. It's going to take a minute for the scan to start, and then you'll see additional information showing up here. Okay, so it did start. It's going to do 30 IP addresses range. Okay, so it's going to take a minute, and it's telling us what devices it finds. So it found SNMP devices. It found a switch here. Found some printers, and that's it. It finished. Found 14 devices. Now I can go back into the asset list and see those devices. Let's try to find the printers it found. Okay, and it is a bit confusing because I have some of those that were imported from the CSV file, so I won't see those very clearly right now, but I think I have one named SEC It's going to take a second for the information to load into the database. Pretty similar to how the agent takes a little while for the information to show up on the list. Let's give it a few more moments and get back to it. I think it may have, yeah, there it is. I've got a device here that came in from SNMP. It is a Samsung printer. I have some information about it detected. This is, by the way, showing generic information that any SNMP, any network device should provide in SNMP, like the name, the location, the IP address, the type. So this is what it brings. And if you're a little familiar with SNMP, you'll be familiar with the OID, with the term OID. OID is just like it's like an identifier that stores information, and each brand, each manufacturer can store their own OIDs. For example, Samsung stores on that particular model we looked at, stores information about how much percentage of the toner is left, and stores it, I think, at that OID. So I can use that to bring in information about how much toner is left. Later on, when we'll get monitoring, we'll see how we can even build upon that information and even get notifications when toner is running low. So this is what you could do with the SNMP. Do we have any questions on chat? Okay, don't see that we have any related questions, so I'm going to let Ori answer your questions, the unrelated questions on chat, and we're going to proceed. Let's look at my slide. We talked about updating asset information manually. We talked about suppliers, support providers. Catalog items I didn't mention. It's pretty straightforward, actually. It's on the left menu under Catalog. It's automatically creating catalog items for different models of computers. The agent does that. But you can create your own catalog numbers and associate assets with those catalog numbers. Later on, when we'll get to CMDB, you'll see how it's going to create relations between the different assets that are of the same model. Okay, for example. This is pretty straightforward. Whatever you create here, you could set up on the asset itself. Right here under catalog item, you can choose the one you created. We talked about software products, licensing, notifications. I don't believe we talked about notifications. Let's go back a bit to software products. Remember the MS Office I created. I stated that I have 5 licenses I purchased, and right now we only have 2 installations, so we're pretty good. We're not exceeding any of the licensed amount, but I do want to get notification as soon as the number of installed software exceeds the number of licenses. What you could do is under notifications, set up a notification for license exceeded, and you're going to need to set up a notification to trigger in case this happens. On the notifications tab, and we're going to see that quite a few times today, the concept of creating notifications, basically just telling what's the action would like to perform when a certain event happens. Okay, we're not defining what's the certain event, we're only defining what's the action that's going to be taken. Let's say I want to get the service request every time a licensed software exceeds number of licenses. Okay, and you can even determine what's the service request details going to be right here. It knows to bring in some of the information, using these variables. But if you want to customize it, you can. Now, when I go back to notifications, I can say every time a license is exceeded, automatically trigger this notification, meaning submit a new service request. And you can also exclude or define a more complex filtering to it, but I'm not going to do that. Now what's going to happen next time somebody installs Microsoft Office 2010 on the network, it's going to go to three installations. Next one would go to 4. Next one would be 5 installations, which is still okay. We're still within the limitation. But as soon as the 6th appearance of Microsoft Office 2010 shows up on the network, it's automatically going to submit a service request for me and tell me that I'm exceeding my Office licenses. Another option here is for unknown software installed. I don't like this option very much. I don't like recommending on it because it requires a lot of work. Okay, let's create a notification for it. Unknown software installed. And let's say I want to get a service request for it. Now when I do that, okay, as soon as I confirm that, it's going to trigger an alert every time software is detected on any asset that is not configured within the software products. Okay, that would require you a lot of time and a lot of work to just create the software products to say what you do allow to be installed on the network. So you can create here, let's say Adobe Reader and any other software you'll need. Say this and this. These are the ones that I do allow. Okay, you can create one for every software you'd like, or you can just create one that's going to be permitted software, and just select all the install names that you do allow. I'm going to say everything. And what's going to happen now, anytime an asset has a new software that isn't listed here, it's automatically going to trigger a notification for unknown software installed. This requires you a lot of work to maintain this list. Every time you want to allow a new software, you're going to need to add it into this list. Every time any user, installs a little application they found on the internet, then you'll need to you'll be alert on it. You'll need to check if you allow it or not, and then add it to the list. Again, this will require you a lot of work, but if this is something you need, you should be aware of this option. Okay, I think we pretty much covered this slide. Oh no, one more thing, reminders. Reminders, I actually mentioned it earlier when we talked about, let's say this asset here, IT001. When I go to maintenance and say the warranty expires on this asset next year on March 1st, okay? I've got my warranty covered until March 1st of 2013. All is well, okay? But what if I want to get a notification before the warranty expires so I can renew it, or maybe start planning to decommission this server, this machine? What I could do is under Preferences, Reminders, you can actually see that it's already configured by default. It has a notification to submit a service request 30 days before the warranty expiration, and you've got the same thing for software products. Okay, and it's going to do that at 9 a.m. Okay, every day at 9 a.m. it checks if any asset is about to have its warranty expire within the next 30 days. If so, it will submit a service request on this asset. Same goes for software products. It's just going to happen a bit later at 9:05. These are the defaults. You can remove those and reconfigure them to different times or different thresholds. If you want to get notification just 14 days before, you could do that. And if you open this little drop down here, you'll see all the fields you could do it by. It's not just for asset management. You could also do that for tasks, projects, suppliers. If you have a contract expiration with suppliers, You can define it in custom fields under suppliers. So these are the reminders, pretty straightforward. The notification is very similar to what we've seen on the software product notifications. It's basically just telling what to do when this notification is triggered. And then under reminders you define what's the condition. Okay, so 30 days before warranty expiration at 9 a.m. trigger this notification. Now let's go back to the slide I skipped. Yeah, it's that one. And talk about a couple additional pages on the asset management, which I kind of skipped. Up until now, we were working on the asset list, and this is the list where all my assets are located in. What I want to show you now is asset groups, and talk about what the asset groups could let you do. So basically you can divide the assets and put them into the groups, and you can also set up a group hierarchy with subgroups. You could do that to represent the physical location, departments, type of computers. Basically, you should consider what's good for you depending on your needs. Okay, based upon that, we will also define admin permissions later on. So you need to keep in mind that if you need to limit admin permissions for assets, you could do that only by groups. So plan your groups according to the permissions you'd like to grant users at administrators at a later stage. Okay, you get a hierarchy in a tree view showing the how your network is structured. You get alerts, and this is quite interesting. Let me actually show you that. This is the asset groups page, and creating a group is just using this new group. I'm going to say Chicago. Let's say that would represent the Chicago office, and let's say I have these assets belong to Chicago. So I'm going to move these assets to group Chicago. Okay, so I have all the assets I chose moved to the Chicago group. And let's say I've got one for, let's say, Toronto. Okay, and within Toronto, let's actually go another level. Let's say I've got servers, and I've got clients. Okay, so the hierarchy is under Toronto. I have clients and servers. I don't have any asset in either one of those because I didn't move anything yet. Let's say this is a server in the Toronto office. I'm just going to move that to the Toronto servers. And I'm going to move all the rest to the Toronto clients. Okay, I have two groups here. I actually have more assets right here. Let's actually move all of them. Sorted by the group. Let's take all of the assets and move them all together into the Toronto clients group. And that's it. Now I go back to asset groups. I have two groups showing me how many assets are in each one of those. Under Toronto, it's divided into servers and clients, and I can go deeper and look into that. Let's say I have technicians that are permitted to look at the clients from Toronto only. So when I go to user management and go to administrator that needs to be tied with permissions, I can say that this user can view inventory only in group clients and its subgroups. Okay, I can give it Toronto, and then they can also view servers, but let's say I want to bind them to the clients only. So as soon as Nicole is going to log in, she's going to have access to the Toronto clients only. So that's what I mean when I say plan your groups according to the permissions you're going to need to grant, because this comes hand in hand. One more thing I want to show is the alerts. Okay, missed the alerts. Let's say you're sending a technician to the Chicago site because you have a serious issue that you need to address. Let's submit a service request. Let's actually do that from Chicago, CERT XP3. I'm going to submit a new, I don't have access to it from here. I'm going to do a service request from right here. Let's say this is, no, let's create a new incident. Doesn't really matter what I choose. The important thing I want to show is under main asset, when I choose, oops, CERT XP3, and let's say this is of urgent and impact is very high, priority automatically goes to highest, and request user, let's say SysAid. Okay, so I've got a service request with a red alert icon. When I go to the asset groups, I can see that I have this red alert icon on the account and PC. Okay, so even when I look at it from the root of my asset groups, you can see that under Chicago there's at least one asset that has a service request with red alert icon on it. So this is giving you a graphical overview of where issues are, and when you send a technician to the Chicago site, I don't know, for maintenance, you can say, okay, there's a computer there with an urgent issue, go take a look at it. Okay, so that's another thing you can make use of in the asset groups. A new page added in SysAid 8.5 is the asset dashboard, which allows you to break down the assets based on different parameters, and this is very dynamic. You can change this very easily. Okay, it's not really grouping where you need to consider your grouping very carefully. This allows you on the dashboard. You can see in my case, I did the breakdown by type first, and I didn't do any subgrouping, but just by type. Okay, and then what you can see here is for other type, for other SNMP type, for printers, for servers, switch, and workstations, all the assets related. Let's take a look at workstations, and you can see under workstations I've got 5 computers right here, and you can play with the graph here to make it easier for you to understand. You can also enlarge it and view it, you know, looking at it with more real estate, more space to look at it. Or if you look at the main one, where this isn't really readable, you can increase the size, and you can see that under the asset management, you've got, let's look at servers. This is my server. Okay, the green here indicates that there's a service request with, oh no, sorry, this is related to monitoring. I'll get to monitoring. I have monitoring on this server. This means that it's being monitored and everything's okay on it. I've got the printers, the workstations, and I can make it, I can arrange it in a way that is more understandable to me. Okay, really cool feature, and you can then also play around with it a little more. Let's do a subgrouping by operating system type, and you'll find under, of course, under the printers and all that stuff, you won't need it, but under workstation you can see that I have Windows 7 Professional, 1 computer. I've got Windows Vista, 1 computer, and I've got Windows XP with 3 computers showing up. You could do the same based on location, based on CPU speed, based on company, based on any one of these attributes. This is really nice and it's working quite well. I'm pretty satisfied with it. By the way, you could also see if I choose workstations. No, sorry. Under workstations, I can choose operating system type, and it's going to show me a pie chart of how the operating systems are distributed on my network. I can also enlarge that and see it clear. This is really cool, I think. I think most of you will probably like this new edition. This is new in 8.5, so if you still don't have 8.5, go ahead and upgrade. Do we have any questions? Okay, don't see that we have any relevant questions, so we're going to proceed. We've already been to that slide about populating asset information, so I can proceed and talk about reporting. I'm going to talk about reporting. I'm going to really do this short because Sarah's going to cover measurements and reportings on the next class. What I want to show you is two things. Under Analyzer, under Inventory, you can generate any one of these reports to get information about your assets. The name of the reports are pretty self-explanatory. The first one, Software Hardware Inventory, is going a bit deeper because then you can choose what you want to run this report by. Let's say if you want to do this by operating system type and show asset details, then it's going to show you in a PDF file all your operating systems and the computers that have that operating system. So you can print that report and run into the meeting you're discussing your assets. I'm not going to talk more about reports right now because we do have Sarah talking about it more deeply on the next class. I do want to show you the manager portal, which shows you charts and graphs that can help you to get a clean overview of your system. There is a predefined view for asset management dashboard, and this could show you, as soon as the information pops up, about the type, how your network is divided. I've got 22 printers here and only 5 workstations. Of course, this isn't very representative to a real environment, but still, you can get an idea of what it could show you. Information about the operating system, about the memory. So I have some computers with very little memory, 256 megabytes, some with 512, some with 3 gigabytes, and one with 8 gigabytes of RAM. About the model, you can see the models of your devices right here and how they divide on your network. You can also customize this and design this. We're going to look into that on the customization session we're going to have on our 5th class. Okay, what time is it? I think it's time for a quick break. Let's take a 5-minute break, and when we come back, we'll proceed and summarize the future-proofing part. Oh no, we'll still have monitoring to talk about. So when we're back, we're going to continue talking about monitoring. Let's take a 5.